Welcome. Let's get right into today's global headlines. First up, Moscow.
Yes, multiple Ukrainian drone attacks overnight led to temporary airport closures there.
Russian authorities are saying they destroyed almost 20 drones,
That's the report. Debris apparently caused some damage on highways, too.
and Ukraine hasn't officially commented.
No, which fits the pattern. It seems like a continuation of their strategy targeting border regions.
Exerting pressure, maybe affecting logistics and morale on the Russian side?
Exactly. And the drone tech itself keeps evolving, It adds a dynamic element.
Okay, shifting to the Middle East. Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a plan for a significant operation in Gaza.
The stated goals are dismantling Hamas and securing hostage releases,
An Israeli official even suggested it could involve capturing Gaza.
which raises huge humanitarian questions, of course, especially civilian safety and aid.
And speaking of aid, the plan is to allow private companies to handle deliveries.
Yes, a move the UN opposes, citing humanitarian concerns. It highlights that tension between security goals and, well, humanitarian needs.
Meanwhile, we're seeing some shifts in U.S.-Israel relations.
Polls show American public support for Israel decreasing, particularly among Democrats and younger people.
Interesting timing, as former President Trump also mentioned facilitating food aid to Palestinians.
Right. This changing public mood in the U.S. could definitely impact the long-term alliance, maybe future policies out of Washington. It's a historically strong relationship, but it seems to be evolving.
Okay, back to the U.S. Former President Trump has floated the idea of reopening Alcatraz again.
Yeah, expanding it as a prison for dangerous inmates. He presents it as a symbol of law and order.
But experts point out some pretty big hurdles, right? Practical financial ones.
Oh, absolutely. Rehabilitating a facility that's been dormant for so long, the cost and infrastructure challenges would be considerable.
Let's turn to Europe now. Germany has a new government.
Yes, Chancellor Friedrich Merz is leading it, ending that period of uncertainty.
His aims are revitalizing the economy, strengthening Germany's international role.
But it's a narrow majority he's working with, and there's that growing far-right opposition to contend with.
So a crucial time for Germany, really, given everything happening internationally and domestically.
Definitely. How Merz navigates this will be key for Germany's position in Europe and globally.
Now, staying with infrastructure issues, there were air travel problems in Newark.
Right. Air traffic controllers lost contact with planes briefly, caused delays, cancellations.
And staffing shortages are being cited as a factor.
Reportedly, yes. It points to ongoing pressures within the FAA's air traffic control system, vulnerabilities in critical transport hubs.
Back to the Middle East conflict. Israel conducted strikes in Yemen.
This was after a Houthi missile attack near Tel Aviv's airport. The Israeli strikes targeted Houthi positions.
The IDF mentioned hitting a key supply source and a cement factory, allegedly used militarily.
The Houthis reported casualties, calling it U.S.-Israeli aggression, though the U.S. denied involvement in the strikes themselves.
It really shows how interconnected these regional conflicts are, doesn't it? The risk of things spilling over.
Absolutely. And the Houthis talking about an aerial blockade just adds another layer of tension.
Now, some political upheaval in Romania.
Yes, Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu resigned. His party, the Social Democrats, left the coalition.
This followed the first round of the presidential election, where a nationalist candidate, George Simeon, came out ahead.
Right. And Simeon's Eurosceptic views are causing some concern in Brussels and other European capitals.
It seems to reflect that wider trend of rising nationalism we're seeing across parts of Europe.
It certainly does. His potential influence could reshape Romania's foreign policy and its EU relationships.
Okay, let's look at a proposal from former President Trump regarding tariffs.
On movies, specifically. He's considering substantial tariffs on films not made in the U.S.
Citing concerns for the American film industry. He mentioned it online first, then talked about discussions with Hollywood execs.
Correct. It's a proposal with potentially big implications for the global film industry co-productions, how we even define a national film.
On a different note, something quite unique. A former Pope-mobile is getting a new life.
Yes, Pope Francis's old vehicle is being turned into a mobile health clinic for children in Gaza.
An initiative by Caritas aiming to provide medical care once a humanitarian corridor opens.
It really highlights the urgent needs there and the ongoing efforts, however challenging, to get essential services to vulnerable people amid conflict.
Elsewhere, infrastructure problems hit Spain. High-speed trains between Madrid and Andalusia were stopped.
Due to theft of copper cables, thousands of passengers were stranded.
Authorities are looking into it as possible sabotage, right? especially since it happened soon after a separate power outage caused delays.
Exactly. It shows how vulnerable essential infrastructure is, both to deliberate acts and, well, just technical failures. Big impact on public transport.
And a change at Wellington Airport in New Zealand.
Ah, yes, the big Hobbit-themed eagle sculptures are coming down after more than a decade.
They were pretty popular landmarks, I imagine.
Very popular with tourists, yeah. But the airport's making way for a new exhibit, something with a local theme, a shift in visual identity, basically.
Turning back to the conflict in Ukraine, there's a report on Russian losses this year.
Yes, based on open-source data analysis, it suggests really substantial losses in 2024, over 45,000 soldiers killed this year alone.
Which is significantly higher than during the initial invasion period.
That's what the analysis indicates, with the heaviest casualties apparently during the recent Eastern offensive.
These figures, even if underestimates, just underscore the immense human cost.
Absolutely. And the report also touches on Russia's efforts to replenish its forces despite these losses.
Now, some disturbing allegations emerging from Syria.
Regarding violence against Alawites, a man claiming involvement stated that government forces essentially advised and monitored armed civilians taking part in attacks.
This follows a surge in sectarian unrest in the coastal region.
These are very serious claims. They raise questions about the role of government forces and their oversight of allied groups, especially with reports of significant civilian casualties.
And a grim story from Peru. 13 miners found dead.
They were kidnapped from the Poderosa gold mine. Reports suggest they were confronting illegal miners when a criminal gang abducted them, wanting control of the mine. It's tragic. And it highlights that growing problem of illegal mining and the associated criminal violence in Peru, the dangers miners face.
In Mexico, the mayor of Tuchitlan in Jalisco has been arrested.
This is part of an investigation into a nearby cartel training site linked to the Jalisco New Generation cartel.
Authorities found human remains near the site and are looking into alleged connections between the mayor and the cartel.
It just underscores the ongoing challenge of cartel influence in Mexico and efforts to tackle alleged corruption at the local level.
Let's touch on former President Trump again. He addressed speculation about seeking a third term.
Right. He stated he's not considering it, acknowledging the constitutional two-term limit.
Though his economic policies, especially tariffs, remain a topic of debate after recent signs of U.S. economic contraction.
His stance on tariffs seems consistent even with the ongoing discussion about their impact.
Meanwhile, Europe commemorated victory in World War II, VE Day.
Yes, but this year's commemorations happened amid some transatlantic concerns.
Concerns about the current U.S. administration's stance on alliances.
That's the feeling in many parts of Europe, yeah. Worries about established alliances and shared values. It adds a layer of anxiety to the commemorations, especially with the war in Ukraine ongoing.
And even historically, right after World War II, Allied relations weren't always simple.
Precisely. There were complexities even then.
Okay, in New York, jury selection has begun for the trial of Sean Diddy Combs.
The music mogul faces federal charges, racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking. He denies them, of course.
And there are numerous related civil lawsuits as well.
It's going to be a high-profile trial, drawing a lot of attention to these very serious allegations. Jury selection is key now for ensuring impartiality.
Let's go to Colombia. Wind farm development in La Guajira.
This is the region home to the YU indigenous group. The projects aim for renewable energy, offer some local benefits,
Right.
but they've also caused cultural disruption, disputes over compensation, and even conflict.
It really shows that complex balancing act, doesn't it? Renewable energy goals versus indigenous rights and environmental impact.
Absolutely. Finding equitable solutions and respecting cultural heritage is critical in these situations.
And finally, an interesting archaeological note from India.
A 1,000-year-old human skeleton discovered in Gujarat back in 2019.
Sounds significant.
Very, but it still doesn't have a permanent museum home due to, well, bureaucratic issues. It's in temporary storage, even though there's a new museum nearby.
Frustrating, I imagine. It highlights how administrative hurdles can sometimes slow down the preservation and showcasing of important historical finds.
It does. So looking back at all this news,
It really paints a picture of a deeply interconnected world, facing so many overlapping challenges. You see conflicts hitting civilians hard in places like Moscow, Gaza, Yemen, Syria.
and political shifts inside countries, Germany, Romania, the U.S. potentially changing international relationships like U.S.-Israel or U.S.-Europe.
History keeps echoing too, doesn't it? VE Day anxieties, the long arc of U.S.-Israel relations.
Right, and then you have these ethical dilemmas popping up everywhere. The wind farms in Colombia, aid delivery in Gaza.
And even looking way back, like with that ancient skeleton in India or the idea of reopening Alcatraz, the past keeps informing or at least raising questions about the present.
Understanding these links, these connections, feels pretty vital for navigating the complex world we're in right now.